What if I told you that the seasons don't just change the external world, they also change your internal world? They have a psychological and a spiritual effect on your consciousness. If you're new to esotericism, you may not really understand this. But if you have some deep understanding of as above, so below, you already know this. But today we're going to be explaining it in great detail. So tune in, take a pen and paper, maybe make some notes. So we have 4 seasons. The sun is the main source of life on the earth. And it changes the circumstances on the earth in 4 different ways. Of course, we have spring, summer, winter, and autumn. These are the 4 states of the earth due to the sun's cycle. Not only do they take place on the earth, they also take place on you, your body, your mind, your spirit, your consciousness. They change things internally and externally. The first thing we need to understand is that we have a dual nature. We have a mind, and in that mind, we have an internal self. That's what we call the spiritual self. It is the individual that exists within their own mind, within their own consciousness. It is the self that imagines, thinks, feels. That's the spiritual self. And internally, that self is the true self. When it's detached from the false identifications, of course, such as the ego. But the true self dwells within the mind, and that's the immortal self. That's the self that will never die, never perish, that will always be there and it always has been there. The internal self. But on the other side of the mind, the outside of the mind, we have this, what we call our physical human body. This is our external physical body. So outside of us is a physical reality, but inside of us is a spiritual non-physical reality. Inside of us cannot be measured. Outside of us can be measured. So we have an internal world and an external world. I think this is the reason why the word individual has the word dual at the end. Dual meaning opposing or two. We have a dual nature. Inner world, in the mind, and a self out the mind. And the mind acts as some sort of doorway. It is a doorway into ourself. So in esotericism, this is what it's all about. It's about we work with the internal world. We try and figure out who we are from the inside out, not who we are outside of us. Because we realize that the external world is nothing but a crystallization of what's happening inside of us. Our lives are a result of every single thought that we thought in the past. So let's not get off track here. Let's carry on. As I was discussing the seasons, we have an internal world in the mind and a self outside the mind. And this is reflected even in the cycles of the heavens. This is how you know the universe is intelligently designed, and the law of correspondence corresponds with everything. The law of correspondence is as above, so below. It's not a Hermetic principle. It's not a Freemasonic principle. The law of correspondence, as above, so below, is just the law of life of the universe. It is in everything. So the daytime, the sun, this is external impressions or expressions, should I say. We express ourselves outside the mind, in the outside world, in the material body, taking actions outside of us during this daytime. The sun represents outward expression. The daytime, this is when we wake up, we're conscious, we do things outside of our mind. But then the nighttime comes around and it becomes dark and the moon rules over the nighttime, and we return back to our internal world. We return back to the darkness. We return back to the internal self, the self in the mind. Really is fascinating. And this is as above, so below. This follows the correspondence. This follows the law. Although that the outside world has a cycle of day and night, so does our own mind have this cycle. As above, so below. As within, so without. What's happening outside of us is also happening inside of us. The mind is also going in a cycle. Because in the daytime, the mind wakes up and we express things externally. But when the sun goes away and the electromagnetic rays of the sun are not very strong, our brainwave decreases, our body activity decreases. It slows down and we return to the internal self. The body switches off and we return to the internal self in the mind. We enter in the doorway of the mind and return to the internal, the spiritual self. And when the body is less active, this is when we are more connected to the internal world, our spiritual true self. So as above, so below corresponds with the day and night, the sun and the moon. The moon represents our internal world, the world inside our mind, the self inside the mind. And the sun represents the external self, in the external world. So not only are these cycles happening in nature, the darkness outside of us when the sun goes away is the same darkness that we go within ourselves when we go to sleep. It's the same cycle. Our bodies are in the cycle of the external world also, as above, so below. But then we can even take this even further. This fractals down even further. If we look at the cycle of the yearly cycle of the sun, which is what we call the 12 zodiac signs, we notice that these 4 seasons also take place in every single cycle of the day. So a yearly cycle can be seen as a big version of a daily cycle, or a daily cycle can be seen as a smaller version of a yearly cycle. For example, we look at Aries, which is spring. This is when the sun springs everything back to life in the spring. This is when the crops start to spring up and start to grow again. But we could see that at 6 a.m. in the morning when the sun rises and just cracks over the horizon and starts to bring light into our day. Aries is associated with the morning time also as spring. Morning time is a smaller version of spring. Then we look at the summertime. The summertime is midday when the sun is at the top of the middle of the sky. This is when the sun is most powerful, most radiant in our day. This could be seen as the summertime. Then when the sun starts to set, this is associated with autumn. Autumn time is the sunset. Then the winter time is associated with the nighttime, the midnight, when everything's very dark. So a daily cycle is basically a smaller version of a yearly cycle. And just how I explained how the cycle of the sun outside of us also happens inside of us with our consciousness falling asleep when the sun goes away, is also happening to us on a yearly cycle also. So the daytime is associated with the summer and the nighttime is associated with the winter. The winter is like the inhale. The summer is like the exhale. It's the breath of the universe, just like how we breathe in and out of our lungs. Everything takes this rhythm and polarity, okay? So winter is associated with the self and the world inside of ourselves, inside of our mind, the spiritual self, the internal. Because the winter is when the sun's rays, electromagnetic rays, are not very powerful. And this decreases brainwave activity, making us more connected to our internal world, inside the mind. But the summer's the complete opposite. The summer is when the sun is very, very powerful. And the sun's powerful electromagnetic rays increase brain activity, making us more actionable in the physical world outside of our mind, in the external world. So summer is the daytime and winter is a big version of the nighttime. Vice versa. Just like how in the winter, we're more in the house. We're inside buildings because it's very cold outside. Animals hibernate. They go inside. They go into little places. They collect all their food and prepare for the winter. They go inside. They go in darkness to hibernate. So does our consciousness, our spirit, the self inside of our mind. We can use these cycles to our advantage, to evolve spiritually, to connect and be more balanced. You know, I've mentioned a lot of this inside the university to my members, to the family inside of there. We discussed this. We had a great discussion about this. And, you know, the live calls we have are priceless. The conversations you can have with someone when they're awake, you never forget them. You always have deep, meaningful conversations. And we discussed this deeply, and we were going into some interesting things about how we can use these types of changes in the seasons for our spiritual growth. We even discussed about spring and autumn and how they're associated with the different spiritual bodies that we have. But anyways, let's not get off track. Lucid dreaming, dreaming itself, and astral projections, I find are more easily accessible during the winter and the night times. Like I said, because the brain activity is decreased due to the sun being not powerful, we are more reconnected with the self inside the mind, the spiritual self, the immortal self. Wintertime is a great time to work on yourself, to start to gaining discipline, to meditating, to really working on the subconscious. Because spiritual work is harder than any physical labor. You really got to dig deep within yourself and be honest and true with yourselves. I think this is the reason why, you know, a lot of people convert to spirituality from religion. They come into spirituality and then they go back to religion because they realize spirituality is it's difficult. You have to be honest with yourself. You have to really face the traumas, the negative aspects of yourself, the dark side of yourself, and bring it to light and transform it. And that sort of work is a lot more difficult to do than any physical labor. So the winter time is the time that we go inside ourselves. We reflect a lot more. We need to work on ourselves, on our mind, on our negative habits, on our dark traits, on our things that we have been pushing away and not controlling. The winter time is that time we can really start to connect with the internal self, work on our imagination, work on our mental willpower, work on all of these things like lucid dreaming, astral projections, and purifying ourselves, removing any mental barriers, any negative belief systems that may be subconsciously holding us back. It's easier to access the subconscious in the nighttime and in the winter, especially the winter. That's why I made this video, because we're in autumn now. We're transitioning into the winter. So I thought I'd share this with you all. And it's important to understand that you are a microcosm of God. Like I said, the law of correspondence associates with everything in the universe, people. Everything. And that's the best thing with the law of correspondence. And I've been using this for the past 3 to 4 years, right? The law of correspondence has determined and filtered out so many lies that was given to me, that's given to you, that's given to everyone in the world. The law of correspondence is like a filter. If someone gives you a piece of information, for example, gravity, and it does not apply with the law of correspondence, then you know it's a lie, because it's a universal thing. What happens inside of me also happens outside of me. What happens in my astral world happens in my material world, more than likely. As above, so below corresponds with everything. The same structure in my veins, in my nervous system, is the same structure in the trees, in galaxies, in everything. As above, so below. The universe is a fractal universe. Therefore, the point that I was getting at is that you are a microcosm of God. The same mind that God manifested things through thinking. He thought the stars, the earth, nature, the human body, designed everything with the God mind. He thought everything into existence. And that mind, them powers that God used to manifest everything into physical existence through the power of thought, is the same mind that you possess, but on a smaller scale. God manifested the macrocosm through thought. As the universe is a mental universe, everything you see around you was thought, then manifested into physical reality. God manifested the macrocosm, the world, through thought, and that same force of thought you use to create the microcosm, to create your own world. You think your life into reality, your world into reality. Your body is a microcosm, a miniature universe. Every thought you think commands 50 trillion cells in your body, and your cells religiously execute on every command that you give it. You're in charge of 50 trillion cells. You're literally commanding a whole civilization inside your body. And this is how you are a reflection of the divine. The God mind created the macrocosm, the world, and you create your own world inside that world using the same power as thought. Very powerful. So everything that happens outside of you is also happening inside of you. The law of correspondence is the most important, the law that you could possibly learn, because it makes everything so clear for you in the universe. Makes life so clear. You see reality for what it truly is. It's a reflection of the higher dimensions. Just like how reality right now is a reflection of what's happening inside of people's minds and consciousness. We can't blame the elites for all the negative things that's happening in reality, because all the negative things that's happening in reality is the negative things that's happening in people's minds. We need to take control of ourselves. So with that being said, thank you all, everyone. If you wish to read more, 90% of you watching this video have already got this book. I want to say thank you for your support. It means the world to me. It makes me research more and write more books. And the book of symbolism is coming very soon. So thank you, everyone. I'll leave a link in the description for the university, for the live calls, and for the book if you wish to join. Have an amazing day.